I hired a young woman to clean the house while my husband and I were out for the day. It was supposed to be a simple favor, a way to tidy up before the coastal rains hit Savannah and turned everything muggy and heavy. But about an hour later, my phone rang. It was her, Brianna, the cleaner. Her voice was a shaky whisper, barely audible over the line. "Ma'am, is there anyone else in the house?" I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips at the cafe. "No," I replied, my heart skipping a beat. "Why do you ask?" There was a pause. Then her words hit like ice. "There's a woman upstairs." I started trembling, the world narrowing to that single chilling sentence. "Get out of there right now," I urged, my voice cracking. I hung up, called the police, and drove home at top speed, my mind racing with visions of intruders and shadows that didn't belong. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of unraveling a secret that had been hiding in my own home for decades, a secret that would shatter my world and reveal a ghost from my past. That morning had started so innocently. I woke up with a spark of energy, determined to clean the house myself. The old place in Savannah, Georgia, with its creaking floors and brick walls over 70 years old, always felt heavier when the humidity rolled in from the coast. I wanted everything spotless, windows gleaming, shelves dusted, the air fresh before the rains made the dust cling like regret. I rolled up my sleeves, grabbed a rag, and stood in front of the living room window, ready to dive in with enthusiasm. The sunlight streamed through the glass, casting warm patterns on the worn hardwood floors. It was one of those rare, perfect mornings where the world felt full of possibility. As I wiped the glass, smearing away fingerprints and streaks, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I glanced at the screen and smiled. It was Yvette, my childhood friend, someone I hadn't seen in years. Her voice burst through the line, cheerful and familiar like a hug from the past. "Simone, I'm passing through Savannah for just one day," she said, her laughter bubbling. "Let's grab coffee. It's been too long." My heart warmed instantly. Yvette and I had shared so much, running through sun-drenched fields as kids, staying up late, whispering dreams under the stars. How could I say no? But then I looked around. At the half-started cleaning, the rags and buckets scattered about, the house was a mess, and I couldn't leave it like that, not with Jerome's dusty study upstairs full of his old books and papers. That's when I thought of Brianna Parrish, the slight, kind-natured young woman in her 20s who lived down the alley. She was working her way through college and always needed extra cash. I called her, and she accepted immediately, her voice grateful and eager. "I'll be there in 15 minutes, Miss Simone." I gave her precise instructions. Clean the study carefully, scrub the stairs to the second floor, and be extra gentle with Jerome's old, dusty shelves. He was a published novelist, after all, and those books were his treasures. I left her a spare key under the mat and told her to lock up tight when she was done. With that sorted, I felt the weight lift. I drove to the Magnolia Tree Cafe, where Yvette was waiting under a sprawling live oak tree, its branches draped in Spanish moss like ancient lace. We hugged, and it was like no time had passed. She told me about her life in the city, her grown children, her bustling days. I shared about Jerome, his success as a writer, and my own tranquil routine, though I admitted the days sometimes felt a little empty. We laughed over old memories, the time we snuck out to watch fireflies by the river, or the silly promises we'd made about our futures. The coffee was hot and strong, the air scented with magnolias, and for a moment, everything felt right. But in the middle of our chat, my phone rang again. It was Brianna. I smiled, assuming she was calling to say she'd finished early. "Hello?" I said cheerfully. But there was no shy greeting on the other end, just agitated breathing, like someone fighting back panic. "Miss Simone," she whispered, her voice so shaky I could barely make it out. "Is there anyone else in the house?" My heart stopped cold. The cafe noise faded away. "No," I replied, forcing calm into my tone. "I'm out having coffee. My husband, Jerome, is at the publisher's and won't be back until tonight. What's going on, Brianna?" There were a few agonizing seconds of silence, broken only by her ragged breaths. Then her voice broke through. "There's a woman on the second floor. I was cleaning the stairs and I saw her. She was wearing a long white dress with messy hair. She walked down the hallway and disappeared into the last room." Her words sliced through me like an ice-cold knife. I tried to stay composed, but my hand shook so badly the phone nearly slipped. My first thought was a break-in. The house was old, but we always locked up tight. How could someone have gotten in? No signs of forced entry, no alarms tripped, but the image she painted, a woman in white, silent and spectral, sent chills racing down my spine. I apologized to Yvette, my voice tight. "Emergency at home," I muttered, shaking my head when she looked worried. I couldn't explain more. My mind was a whirlwind. Back on the phone, I told Brianna, "Get out right now, lock the door, and wait outside. I'm on my way." I called the police as I sped through Savannah's winding streets, my voice cracking with anxiety. "There's an intruder in my house," I explained, rattling off details while my imagination spun horrors. What if the woman was dangerous? What if Brianna was in trouble? I tried calling Brianna again, but she didn't pick up. Each unanswered ring hammered my heart harder, visions of the worst flashing in my mind. Attacks, struggles, silence. The streets felt endless that day, even as I floored the accelerator. When I finally pulled up to the house, a police cruiser was already there, lights flashing silently against the old bricks facade. Brianna sat hunched on the front steps, her face pale as moonlight, eyes wide with terror. I rushed to her, wrapping her in a hug. "Are you okay? Did you see anything else?" She just shook her head, lips pressed tight, unable to speak. Two officers emerged from the house, one middle-aged with a stern, no-nonsense expression, the other younger, more wide-eyed. "We checked every corner," the older one said. "Every room, closet, under the beds, even the backyard shed. No one there. No signs of forced entry, doors and windows locked, no scratches or marks." A sigh of relief, but a knot of unease lingered in my gut. Brianna, still trembling, finally spoke. "I swear I saw her," Misty moaned. "She didn't look real, like a shadow. I won't go up to the second floor again." I stroked her shoulder, trying to console her, but doubt crept in. The house was ancient, full of dark corners and creaking doors. It had belonged to Jerome's family before us, and I'd always felt like it hid secrets in its walls. But a woman? A ghost-like figure? Just then, Jerome's sedan pulled into the cobblestone driveway. He stepped out, his face registering surprise at the police car and the scene. I grabbed his arm, quickly recounting everything. I expected worry, urgency, maybe even fear. But Jerome only smiled faintly, a rare, almost amused expression crossing his features. He approached Brianna, patted her shoulder gently, and said in a soft, almost mocking voice, "You must have been tired, honey, and confused the sun's reflection with the shadow. Our house is old. It has many corners that play tricks on the eyes." Brianna lowered her head, silent. I watched her, my heart heavy. She wasn't fanciful. She was hard-working, honest. Why would she make this up? But Jerome's calm gaze made me question myself. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was nothing. I apologized to the police, embarrassment burning in my chest. I paid her, told her to rest, and promised I'd call her if I needed her again. As they all left, the house fell quiet, but the unease didn't fade. That whisper from upstairs lingered in my mind, a shadow I couldn't shake. Little did I know, retirement was coming, and with it, nights of strange sounds that would drag me deeper into the darkness. If you're listening to the story of hidden truths and vengeance, tell me in the comments, where are you tuning in from?
Has a whisper ever changed your life? Stick around. The shadows are just beginning to stir. 3 months after that chilling whisper from Brianna, the one that sent shadows dancing through my mind, I officially retired. No more rushed warnings scrambling for work, no endless meetings or deadlines chasing me like ghosts. The old house in Savannah became my entire world, wrapping around me like the Spanish moss on the oaks outside. But retirement wasn't the peaceful haven I'd imagined. The change in pace left me restless, staring at the ceiling in the dead of night, listening to the clock's unrelenting ticking echo through the darkness. That's when the strange sounds started. At first, they were subtle, like whispers from the house itself, small thuds from the attic, as if something had accidentally toggled over. I told myself it was the wind rattling the old windows or the wood settling with the shifting weather. But as the nights wore on, the noises grew bolder, more insistent. A chair scraping slowly across the floor, heavy and deliberate. Light footsteps pacing back and forth like someone lost in thought. And sometimes the faint rustle of paper, as if pages were being turned in a forbidden book. These weren't random creaks. They felt alive, purposeful. They pulled me from sleep, leaving me wide-eyed and wondering, what if Brianna's shadow wasn't a trick of the light? What if something or someone was up there watching, waiting? Little did I know, these echoes were the first cracks in a facade built on decades of deception, leading me toward a truth that would upend everything I thought I knew about my life and my husband. One morning, as Jerome and I sat in the kitchen for breakfast, the sunlight filtering through the lace curtains and casting golden flecks on the table, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The sounds had kept me up again, gnawing at my peace. I tried to keep my voice steady, stirring my coffee absentmindedly. "Honey, I've been hearing noises in the attic lately. It's not the wind. It sounds like someone is up there." Jerome didn't even look up from his newspaper, the pages crinkling under his fingers. He yawned, distracted, and replied offhandedly, "It's just rats, Simone. Our attic is old, full of stuff. It's a mouse paradise. I'll buy some traps tomorrow and set them. That's that." His words were casual, almost reassuring, but they didn't ease the knot in my stomach. Rats? Maybe, but those footsteps didn't scurry. They paced with intention, like a person burdened by secrets. True to his word, the next day Jerome came home with a handful of large metal traps, the kind that snapped shut with a brutal finality. He climbed the ladder to the attic door, placed them strategically at the base, right beneath the old wooden hat, and dusted off his hands with a satisfied grin. "There," he said, turning to me with a wink. "Now you can sleep soundly, my love." And oddly enough, the noises stopped. Completely. No more scraping chairs, no footsteps, no rustling papers. The house fell silent, and I sighed with relief, convincing myself Jerome had been right all along. Maybe it was just mice, and I'd let my imagination run wild, amplified by the emptiness of retirement. For a few eddies, peace returned, or so I thought. But then the strange things escalated, impossible to be dismissed as mere rodents or tricks of the mind. It started with something as mundane as a package of spicy sausage from the local market. I loved its intense flavor, the way it bit back with heat, perfect for a quiet weekend treat. Jerome, on the other hand, had always despised anything spicy. He wouldn't even taste it, complaining it upset his stomach. I wrapped it carefully in paper and tucked it into the refrigerator, already planning how I'd savor it. The next morning, when I opened the door to grab some for breakfast, I froze. A large chunk was missing, the cut irregular and hasty, as if someone had sliced it off in a rush. My mind raced. Who could have done this? I marched into the living room where Jerome sat reading the paper. Did you take some of the sausage from the refrigerator? I asked, trying to keep my tone light but failing to hide the edge. He looked up, frowning as if the question was absurd. I felt like trying something spicy yesterday, he said distractedly, folding the paper, so I cut off a little piece. It was good, actually. I stood there, motionless, words failing me. Jerome? Eating spicy food? He'd always turned his nose up at even mild seasonings, let alone something fiery like that. But I didn't want to argue, didn't want to seem paranoid, so I nodded and walked away, a doubt lodging like a stone in my chest. A few days later, the sausage vanished entirely. I rummaged through the fridge, checked the trash, even the pantry. Nothing. No wrapper, no remnants. This time, I didn't ask Jerome. An uncomfortable chill settled over me, like ice forming in my veins. If not him, then who? And why lie about it? The unease built from there. One Saturday afternoon, Jerome and I drove to Charleston, South Carolina to visit old friends. We left early, the house locked up tight, and didn't return until late at night. The drive back was quiet, the road winding through moonlit marshes that whispered with unseen life. When we stepped inside, the house was silent as a tomb. Exhausted, I headed upstairs to the second-floor bathroom to wash my face and shake off the day's fatigue. But as I crossed the threshold, my foot met something cold and damp. The floor was soaked, water pooling between the tiles and seeping into my sandals. I gasped, looking around. The shower walls glistened with fresh drops, sliding down like tears as if someone had just stepped out moments ago. My heart hammered wildly. No one had been home all day. How was this possible? I called out, my voice trembling, "Jerome, come here, please. The bathroom is soaked like someone took a bath." He shuffled in, rubbing his eyes, and glanced around with a shrug. "It must have been the afternoon rain coming in through the vents here, my love." I peered out the window. The street below was bone dry under the street lamps, not a hint of moisture. "It hasn't rained, Jerome," I said, struggling to stay calm. He frowned, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "Then it must be a leak in old pipes. You always worry about nothing. I'll call a plumber tomorrow." But he never did. In the days that followed, the floor stayed dry as if the incident had never happened. I checked the vent and pipes myself. Everything normal. His explanation was reasonable, yet it failed to erase the growing dread. The noises in the attic, the missing sausage, the inexplicable puddle, these weren't isolated quirks. They were fragments of a puzzle, forming a picture I couldn't see, but one that filled me with a contradictory mix of fear and curiosity. A week later, driven by that nagging unease, I decided to clean Jerome's study myself. It was his sanctuary on the second floor. The small room with dusty old bookshelves, crammed with hundreds of books, old documents, and chaotic piles of drafts. I'd always thought we should donate some of the lesser-read volumes to the city library. Let them find new hands. That day, I stood in the middle of the room, starting with the desk, classifying the books and notes stacked haphazardly, as if Jerome never intended to organize them. As I lifted a heavy pile of papers, my hand slipped, and they cascaded to the floor with a fluttering crash that shattered the silence and made me jump. Kneeling to gather them, I noticed a small wooden drawer in the desk, one that had been stuck for years, spring open with a dry click. I hesitated, my pulse quickening, then peered inside. Beneath a layer of yellow traps lay a small hardback notebook, its dark brown leather cover worn at the corners, bound with a loose cord. It looked ancient, out of place among Jerome's modern gadgets and pristine sheets. He hated anything old-fashioned. He wrote everything on his computer, from novels to shopping lists. Once, I'd asked him to jot down a restaurant address, and he'd booted up his laptop instead of using the pen right there. So whose was this? With a mix of curiosity and dread, I took it in my trembling hands and opened the first page. The inside was filled with handwritten entries, soft, elegant calligraphy, clearly a woman's. I flipped through, skimming story outlines, character descriptions, plot ideas. One fragment described a small mountain town where a woman waited alone for someone who would never return. Another hinted at a buried secret, details that made my skin crawl. These ideas mirrored the plots of Jerome's most famous novels, the ones that had brought him fame and our comfortable life. My heart pounded, throat dry. It couldn't be coincidence. Jerome despised handwriting. He called it slow and messy. A secret collaborator? And admires the gift? I sat in his chair, the notebook heavy in my lap. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, demand answers, but I knew him too well. He'd smile, explain it away as his reader's token or an old experiment, and I'd nod, letting it fade into silence as I had so many times. Not this time. I slipped the notebook back, pushing the drawer shut, hiding it like a forbidden treasure. And that night, sleep evaded me again, the clock ticking like a countdown to something inevitable. As the days blurred, these incidents wove a web of suspicion around me, tightening with every unexplained echo. The attic called to me in the quiet hours, its secrets pressing down. What was Jerome hiding? And why did the house feel like it was breathing, alive with unspoken truth? If this tale of hidden shadows resonate, share in the comments. Have you ever heard noises that weren't there? Or were they? From which city are you listening? Stay with me. The night is about to reveal more than I bargained for.
In the wake of discovering that mysterious notebook, its elegant feminine handwriting echoing the soul of Jerome's novels like a stolen whisper, I tried to cling to normalcy, but the house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a labyrinth of secrets, each creak and shadow pulling me deeper into doubt. I watched Jerome's every gesture, every fleeting look, every word, searching for cracks in the man I'd loved for decades. Lately, he'd adopted a new habit that only fueled my suspicions. Around 10 p.m., as I settled into bed with a book, he'd announce he needed to work in the study. "I have to concentrate a little, Simone," he'd say in a soft but firm voice, his eyes avoiding mine. "The manuscript is at a complicated point. You go to sleep first." I'd nod, forcing a smile, but each time the study door clicked shut, an invisible chasm widened between us. What was he really doing in there? And why did the attic's silence now feel like a held breath, waiting to exhale? These fractured nights were unraveling me, thread by thread, leading to a confrontation that would shatter the fragile peace. If you've ever felt your home turn against you, whispering truths you weren't ready to hear, then you know the dread building in my chest, a dread that would soon force me to face the light in the darkness. One such night, I woke up parched, the clock on the nightstand glowing 1 a.m., its second hand ticking like a metronome in the void. The bed beside me was empty, the sheets cold and undisturbed, as if Jerome had never lain there. My heart leaped, a wave of disquiet washing over me. Where was he? I slipped on a thin robe and padded into the hallway, the floorboards cool under my bare feet. Moonlight filtered through the windows, casting elongated shadows that danced like specters on the walls. I headed to the study, assuming he'd fallen asleep at his desk, overwhelmed by publisher pressures, as he sometimes did. But when I pushed the door open, the room was vacant. The computer screen, dark, the chair tucked neatly under the desk, untouched. "Jerome?"
I called softly, my voice echoing in the emptiness. No answer. I checked the kitchen next, thinking he might have gone for a late-night glass of water, but it was empty too, the moonlight turning the shadows of the dishes into ghostly silhouettes. Panic edged in as I wandered the house, calling his name louder, my voice growing shakier with each unanswered echo. My heart pounded, sensing I was on the brink of something irreversible. Passing the staircase to the second floor, I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible step, like a secret being tiptoed away. I looked up, and there, under the dim hallway light, was a silhouette descending, slowly, barefoot and careful, as if avoiding detection. It was Jerome. In his hand, he carried a porcelain plate, one from our weekend dinner set, pristine and empty. When he saw me standing there, his eyes widened in surprise, the plate slipping from his grasp. It hit the stone floor with a sharp clank, shattering into jagged pieces that scattered like accusations. The sound tore through the night's silence, startling me back a step. I stared at the fragments. Clean? No traces of food or crumbs, as if it had been washed meticulously. Confusion swirled in my mind. What were you doing up there at this hour? I thought you were in the study. He bent down, picking up the shards with deliberate slowness, avoiding my gaze, buying time. I got stuck on the end of the book, he said in a forced tone. The editor won't stop pressuring me, you know. I needed a quiet place, so I went upstairs for a while, got hungry, and took some food up. I know to help. Her fingers brushing on the cold floor, sending a shiver through me, not of familiarity, but of distance. That hand, once a source of comfort, now felt alien. I knew the publisher's oath kept him tense. Mr. Sterling was relentless. But this? Sneaking around with an empty plate? I wanted to believe him. Told myself it was just stress, that I was overreacting. But the doubt festered. A seed taking root.
The next morning, the house hung heavy with unspoken tension, like an invisible fog. I woke exhausted, my head throbbing with doubts. Jerome rose earlier than usual, preparing coffee in silence, the clink of porcelain echoing without our customary good morning. He locked himself in the study, the door shutting with finality, a clear signal he wanted no interruptions. By noon, he emerged, dressed in a gray suit, a small suitcase in hand. He paused in the living room where I sat, nursing a cup of cold tea. "I need to go away for a few days," he said in a flat, emotionless voice. "Maybe Atlanta. I need a change of scenery for inspiration." Surprise jolted me. Jerome never left impulsively. He planned everything meticulously, consulting me on itineraries. "Why so suddenly?" I asked, striving for calm though my heart raced. He stared out the window, sunlight dusting the panes. "The idea just came to me," he replied monotonously. "Be careful while I'm gone." But before stepping out, he turned abruptly, gripping my shoulders harder than usual, making me flinch. "Simone, while I'm away, don't let anyone in. Do you hear me? Especially no one from the publishing house. If Mr. Sterling comes looking, tell him I went on a trip and you don't know when I'll be back." I nodded, but unease bloomed inside me. His words weren't a suggestion. They were a command laced with warning. What was he so afraid of? Jerome had been gone barely 2 hours when the doorbell rang. Peering through the peephole, I saw Mr. Sterling, his editor, flanked by a young assistant, both looking impatient. My chest fluttered. Jerome's words echoed in my mind, but I couldn't ignore them. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door with a forced smile. Mr. Sterling barged in without invitation, his face twisted in annoyance. "Miss Whitlock, I know Jerome is home. Stop covering for him. We need the manuscript urgently. The deadline was 2 weeks ago." Composing myself, I echoed Jerome's script. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, but he left this morning for inspiration. I don't know when he'll return." He laughed ironically, the sound that chilled me. Pointing toward the Hamilton's house across the street, he snapped, "Don't lie to me. Mr. Hamilton says he sees the attic light on until late every night. If Jerome is working that hard, he should have the manuscript ready, not hiding." The young assistant added gently, "Ma'am, we just want to help. If he's in writer's block, he should talk to us." But I barely heard her. Mr. Sterling's words struck like lightning. The attic light? We never went up there. It was a dusty graveyard of boxes and cobwebs. Why would a light be on every night? My heart stuttered. I ushered them out, promising updates. But as the door closed, I leaned against it, trembling. The pieces clicked. The noises, the missing food, the puddle, the notebook, the empty plate, and now this light. All pointing upward, to the attic. Fear gave way to cold determination. I had to know. In the backyard shed, amid dust and old oil smells, I found the forgotten folding ladder, dragging it upstairs with effort. Placing it under the attic hatch, my heart pounded not with terror but urgency. The rusty latch resisted, but I pushed until it clicked open, releasing a damp gust of stale air and old paper. Flashlight in hand, I climbed, each rung creaking like a warning. The attic loomed dark and vast, full of shrouded furniture and cobwebs. In the far corner, a small organized space, a table, a chair, an oil lamp flickering yellow. And there, a thin woman in a yellow dress, writing by its light. Who is there?" I stammered. She turned, her pale face familiar. A ghost from my past. As her eyes met mine, my world tilted. Who was this woman, hidden in my home? The truth awaited, ready to break me. If this unraveling grips you, comment below. What would you do if your home hid such secrets? From where are you listening? Hold on. The attic's revelation will change everything. Climbing those creaking rungs into the attic's suffocating darkness, flashlight beams slicing through cobwebs and dust, I never imagined I'd come face to face with a ghost from my own bloodline. The space was a forgotten realm. Stacked boxes, shrouded furniture, the air thick with the scent of old paper and confinement. In the farthest corner, under the dim glow of an oil lamp, sat a thin woman with tangled white hair cascading like a forgotten waterfall, her yellow dress torn at the edges. She scribbled furiously on paper, the pencil scratched the only sound in the void. Who is there?" I stammered, my voice weak and swallowed by the shadows. She turned abruptly, her gaunt face illuminated, sunken eyes, pale skin, but oh so familiar. My legs buckled. I gripped an old trunk to stay upright. It was Alana, my sister, vanished 30 years ago, the one we'd mourned as lost forever. She was alive, here in my home, a prisoner in this dusty prison. "Sister Simone," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread. Tears flooded my eyes as the world crumbled. How? Why? This revelation wasn't just a secret. It was a betrayal that would rip open old wounds and expose a lifetime of lies. If you've ever unearthed a family truth that shattered your reality, you know the storm raging in my heart. A mix of joy, horror, and rage that would lead us to justice, but at a devastating cost. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks as I staggered toward her, the flashlight trembling in my grip. Around her lay evidence of a hidden life, stacks of handwritten manuscripts, empty cans, water bottles, a filthy blanket on a thin mattress, even a bucket for necessities. It was a cage disguised as a corner. Alana's dry lips quivered. She couldn't say more, just stared with eyes brimming with unshed tears, pleading for understanding. My sister, the vibrant girl I'd lost, the one whose disappearance had aged our mother overnight and left me hollow, was reduced to this fragile specter. Alana, I whispered, taking her bony arm, feeling every fragile contour beneath her skin. Come downstairs. Come down now. I helped her stand, her legs wobbling like a newborn fawn's, unaccustomed to freedom after decades. Guiding her down the stairs was agony, each unsure step a reminder of her imprisonment. The house lights hit her face, highlighting her hollow cheeks and the squinting eyes, blinded by the brightness after years in dimness. She looked like a creature of the shadows emerging into day, and it broke my heart anew. I set her in the living room's softest armchair, the lamp's glow a gentle caress. Rushing to the kitchen, I filled the glass with cold water, my hands shaking. She tried to hold it, but spilled the most. I knelt, steadying it, helping her sip like a child. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back. She needed my strength. Then Alana crumbled, her body racked with silent sobs, a dam bursting after 30 years. I held her tight, feeling her vertebrae through her thin frame, letting her pain pour out in waves. No questions yet, just silence, letting the tears wash away some of the torment she'd endured. When she finally calmed, her voice emerged broken, a voice from the grave. Sister Simone, I never thought I'd see you again, especially not like this. I squeezed her hand, willing warmth into her cold fingers. Tell me, Alana, I said, my voice foreign yet tender. Tell me, what happened? Why are you here? Her words came like stabs, each one piercing deeper. She spoke of that fateful night, 30 years ago. Darren Albright, her editor, summoning her to his apartment for work. Naive and young, she went, but he was drunk, his eyes predatory. He tried to force himself on her, menacing and unrelenting. In panic, she grabbed a marble statue and struck him, just to stab him. But the blow was fatal. He fell, hitting his head, lifeless. Paralyzed with fear, and Leonard wanted to call the police to confess. But then Jerome arrived, claiming Lee'd come to invite her to dinner. Witnessing the scene, he stayed chillingly calm. You'll go to prison, Alana, he said coldly. Lose everything. Let me help. For Simone's sake, I'll protect you. He manipulated her with my name, convincing her hiding was the only way to spare our family shame. That night, he buried Dan Albright's body in the low country woods near the OGT River in a grave no one would find. Then he smuggled Alana into our attic while I slept, promising it was temporary. But temporary became eternity. 30 years as a ghost in her sister's home.
Jerome spread rumors. Darren had withdrawn money. He and Alana were lovers who'd fled together. The world believed it. Even I did, grieving her as a runaway. But the truth?
Jerome had stolen her life. The first years were hell, Alana continued hoarsely, gaze distant. Fear, guilt, loneliness. I dreamed of police raids, of eternal darkness. To survive, she wrote stories of freedom, worlds where she wasn't trapped. One day, Jerome discovered her manuscripts. His eyes gleamed like a thief's. "You have talent, Alana," he said. "Write for me. I'll be your voice." Paralyzed, she complied. Jerome, who'd quit accounting to pursue writing, was no author. He was a plagiarist, publishing her work as his own. A ghostwriter, in the literal sense, chained in my attic. She wanted to stop, to confess, but Jerome threatened. "If you turn yourself in, Simone suffers most. She'll lose everything. Family, reputation." He used our love against her, keeping her silent. Since my retirement, it grew harder. She'd sneak showers when we were out, steal food at night, leaving traces, like the puddle or a missing sausage. Her stories, set in a nostalgic past without modern tech, reflected her frozen world. Letters instead of emails, waiting souls mirroring her tragedy. Rage boiled in me, tears of betrayal streaming. Jerome's success, our life, all built on her pain. "I didn't know, Alana," I whispered, broken. "I trusted him." She shook her head, gripping my hands. "Don't apologize. I let him manipulate me to protect you." But she couldn't endure more. "I can't live like this," she said firmly. "I've paid for 30 years. I want to face justice. Turn myself in." Her words gutted me. I'd lost her once, now I'd lose her to the law. But seeing her resolve, I nodded. "Okay, Alana, we'll go together." The next morning, I dressed her in my clothes, too big for her frail form, and drove to the police station. She marveled at the changed world, electric cars, smartphones. At the department, I demanded the head detective, mentioning her disappearance. In a stark interrogation room, Alana confessed everything: the accidental killing in self-defense, Jerome's cover-up, her imprisonment. The officers listened in stunned silence, files reopened, teams dispatched. They searched the attic, collecting her manuscripts and evidence. Another team found Darren's remains in the woods, DNA confirming it. Jerome's arch warrant issued. Police ambushed him at home upon his return. He surrendered without fight. But days later, a call shattered me. Alana had taken her life in detention. The phone slipped from my hand. She left a letter. "Dear Sister Simone, when you read this, I'll be truly free. For 30 years, I wrote to survive, but never as myself. The truth was my only right act. Don't be sad. I've finished my story. The final manuscript is in the attic's wooden box, under the table. Publish it as Lucia Whitlock." I clutched it, sobbing. My sister, reclaimed and lost again. Alana's death was a void, but her wish burned in me. The scandal would erupt, just deserved, but at what price? If this pain echoes your own hidden losses, share below. What would you sacrifice for truth? From where do you listen? Stay. The final chapter brings reckoning and a sister's legacy to light. In the shattering aftermath of Alana's final escape, her life taken by her own hand in that cold detention cell, leaving only a letter soaked in my tears, I was adrift in a sea of emptiness. I'd reclaimed my sister from the shadows, only to lose her again, this time forever. The pain was a constant ache, a void where her fragile presence had briefly flickered back to life. But her words in that letter burned like a beacon. I finished my story. Publish it as Lucia Whitlock. It was her last wish,
a plea to let her voice echo beyond the attic's confines. The scandal that followed would shake Savannah and beyond, exposing Jerome's crimes and rewriting our family's legacy. Yet amid the ruins, I found purpose, not in vengeance, but in honoring Alana's stolen light. If you follow this tale of hidden prisons and reclaimed truths, you know the quest of silence. Now, as the dust settles, join me in the final unveiling, where a ghost finds her name and freedom at last. What walls in your life need tearing down? Let's reflect together as this story closes. The trial against Jerome unfolded a few months later, transforming into a national scandal that gripped the country like a fever. The press dubbed it the Ghostwriter of Savannah affair. Front pages screaming headlines about a woman imprisoned in her own sister's home. Her talent pilfered to fuel a false literary empire. Evidence mounted like an avalanche. Darren's remains unearthed from the low country woods. Alana's manuscript from the attic bearing her unmistakable handwriting. Her recorded confession before her death. And even neighbor testimonies about the nightly attic light. Faced with this irrefutable web, Jerome lowered his head in the courtroom and confessed. His voice, a hollow echo of the man I'd once loved. I did it to protect her, he claimed weakly. But the jury saw through the lies, to the manipulation, the theft, the decades of deprivation. He was charged with a litany of felonies, unlawful appropriation of copyrights, illegal deprivation of liberty, conspiracy to cover up a crime, and obstruction of justice. The sentence came down like a hammer. Decades behind bars. A fitting end for the thief who'd built our life on my sister's suffering. But I felt no relief, no vindication. For me, Jerome had died the day I climbed into that attic and saw Alana's haunted eyes. The husband who whispered love in the quiet nights was now a stranger, a shadow burdened by secrets that had poisoned everything. I didn't attend the trial. I couldn't bear to face him, to look into eyes that had hidden such monstrosity while sharing my bed. Instead, I retreated to the house. Once a home, now a hollow shell echoing with painful memories. The walls seemed to whisper Alana's story, urging me to fulfill her final request.
One fading afternoon, as sunlight slanted over the cobblestone street outside, I mustered the courage to return to the attic. This time there was no fear, no oppressive dread, only a sense of pilgrimage. I climbed the ladder with a flashlight, my heart lighter, as if seeking a piece of Alana she'd left for me. Under the table, just as her letter described, sat a small wooden box, old but cherished, like a vessel for her final treasure. Inside lay a stack of yellowed pages, meticulously handwritten in her soft, fluid script. It was her autobiography, a novel woven from her life's threads. Our sunlit childhood running through Savannah's fields, dreams of becoming a writer she'd confided in me under starry skies. The fateful night that stole her future, the 30 years in darkness, clinging to pencil and paper to preserve her sanity. Every page was a revelation, a stab of pain and a hymn to resilience. She wrote of the loneliness that clawed at her, nights imagining sunlight on her skin, and the unyielding strength that kept her soul from breaking. I carried the box downstairs to the living room, sat under the desk lamp's warm glow, and immersed myself. There were passages that brought tears streaming. Her descriptions of hearing our voices below, yearning to call out, but silenced by fear.
the worlds she crafted to escape, only to have them stolen. I spent weeks editing, reviewing every line with care, as if touching her essence. Nights blurred into dawn, my eyes burning, but I pressed on, honoring her voice. This wasn't just a book. It was Alana's testament, the cry of a forgotten woman stripped of her identity, now ready to speak. I contacted Jerome's former publishing house, bracing for rejection amid the scandal. But when I sent the manuscript, their response was electric. "This is a masterpiece," the editor said over the phone, voice thick with emotion. "We'll publish it with the respect Alana deserves." The book emerged under her chosen name, Lucia Whitlock, as she'd wished. On the first page, I added a single sentence as prologue. No one should be imprisoned in the dark, especially if they love freedom. It was my message to her, a whisper across the void to the sister I'd loved and lost. The book became a phenomenon, touching hearts across America and the world. Readers devoured Alana's raw sincerity, her poetic prose born from suffering, admiring the talent that had been buried for so long. Letters poured in, fans sharing how her story inspired them to break their own silences, to face hidden pains. My heart swelled with a tight warmth. You did it, Alana. Your voice is free. Sometimes I still ascend to the attic, but it's transformed now. No longer a cage, but a small library I'd cleaned out and aired out. Sunlight streams through the opened window, illuminating shelves lined with her works. I stand there, gazing at the lively street below, feeling her presence in the pages, in the light. Free at last. When everything ended, I understood a profound truth. No wall is thick enough to contain secrets forever. Lies, no matter how artfully concealed, rot like dust on forgotten shelves. Alana's life taught me that silence can be crueler than guilt, turning people into ghosts within their own existence. The lesson: dare to face the truth, even however painful. Speak up, even if your voice trembles. For only in stepping from the darkness do we find true freedom, and only then can imprisoned souls rest. This story, drawn from real shadows of pain, has changed names and places to protect those involved, not to judge, but to inspire reflection. How many suffer in silence within their homes? If you were in my shoes, would you choose quiet to preserve peace, or confront everything to reclaim your voice? Share your thoughts below. I want to know, as every story can light the way for others. God bless his courage, leading us to brighter days. If this tale moved you, like, subscribe, and tell me, did you enjoy it? And from which city are you listening? Your support means the world. Consider a super thanks to help bring more stories like this. Check out two of my channel's most beloved tales on screen now. They're sure to surprise